Theodore Roosevelt became president in 1901 and stayed in office until 1909. He was a proponent of progressivism and assisted greatly in both conservation of the environment as well as national parks and consumer protection. Shortly after being elected into office, Roosevelt was faced with the coal miners' strike and had to try to mediate the dispute. Unfortunately for Roosevelt, no compromise was reached, and he threatened to take over the mines with federal troops. Events such as the labor dispute of the coal miners' strike eventually led to President Roosevelt creating the Square Deal principle. This principle was comprised of three parts: control of corporations, consumer protection, and the conservation of the environment.
After the realization that the Sherman Antitrust Act was ineffective in controlling big business, they needed a regulation that would affect these trusts. In addition to the Square Deal, Roosevelt broke up railroad monopolies and aimed to create more federal government power in business. Regulations such as the Elkins Act of 1803 and Hepburn Act of 1906 allowed the government to regulate rates and oppose any monopolistic advances.
President Roosevelt's Square Deal policy is to protect consumers. In the early 1900s, citizens believed in virtually any label in consequence to the lack of food regulation available to the public. Upton Sinclair, an author at the time, published a book titled The Jungle. The book was published in 1906 and delineated the Chicago meat industry with vivid detail in purpose of exposing the plight of immigrant industry workers. In consequence to the vulgar graphics described in the book, people were both disgusted and shocked by the practices of the slaughterhouse industry. President Roosevelt acted with urgency. He ordered inspection of the methods used in food handling in Chicago to find what Sinclair has written was factual. Roosevelt decided to keep his discovery quiet and instructed Congress to pass the Meat Inspection Act and Pure Food and Drug Act of 1906. This influential achievement helped prevent the mislabeling of food, alcohol, and drugs while affirming the consumption of safe and healthy foods.
Theodore Roosevelt was a strong supporter of conservationism and the preservation of the environment. The Reclamation Act of 1902 funded irrigation projects which provided clean water to small farms and placed approximately 200 million acres of land under federal protection. Roosevelt established the United States Forest Service, later called the National Park System. During his presidency, Roosevelt opened 5 national parks, 18 national monuments, and 51 bird sanctuaries.